All right, so let's talk about the exercises on checkpoint number 6. So these were basically all designed to give you some practice with, the many different rules that we've talked about so far. So this first function here, we have this function f, which is defined as the product of these two smaller functions, or two simpler functions. So we're going to use the product rule. So how do I do that? The derivative of this is going to be equal to the derivative of one function times the other function plus, and now we're basically going to reverse, plus the first function times the derivative of the second. So now we have to differentiate these simpler functions. What's the derivative of 3x squared plus 4? So we can directly apply the power rule to that. The derivative of 3x squared is 6x. 4 is a constant, so its derivative is 0. So 6x times 2 to the x plus 3x squared plus 4 times the derivative of 2 to the x. So the derivative of any exponential function will include the exponential function and then multiplied by the natural log of its base. So here's the derivative. I did not capture the choices, but this might not look identical to the correct answer, but it can be simplified or rearranged to be identical to whatever the right answer is. All right, next one. Again, we have a function that is defined as the product of two functions. So we can kind of set it up the same way. F prime of x will be equal to the derivative of sine of x times cosine of x plus sine of x times the derivative of cosine of x. So what's the derivative of sine of x? That is cosine of x times cosine of x plus sine of x times the derivative of cosine of x, which is negative sine of x. This will be equal to cosine squared of x minus sine squared of x. Right, moving on to number 3. Which of the following is the derivative of f of x equals tangent of x? So there might be a lot on here. So just based on the way this is worded, there are probably a few that are equivalent. So I will leave those details to you, but let's find this derivative. So one of the things that, kind of saw in the x ticket is if f of x equal to tangent x, then f prime of x is equal to secant squared of x, or 1 over cosine squared of x. So these are two equivalent ways to talk about this. One thing I do want to point out is that you can get, if you see the way the derivatives of sine and cosine behave, as you take higher order derivatives of them, you can get the derivatives for the other 4 trig functions from there. So one way I want to illustrate that is through looking at tangent x as this quotient, sine of x over cosine of x. So how do I take the derivative of a function using quotient rules? So what's the derivative of sine of x over cosine of x? That'll be equal to the derivative of sine of x, which is cosine of x, times the denominator, which is cosine of x, minus the numerator, which is sine of x, times the derivative of cosine of x, which is negative sine of x, all over the denominator squared. So that's cosine squared of x. So what's going on with this numerator? It looks pretty complicated. So I get cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x. One thing I am fairly confident you've seen before is that this is an identity in the numerator. Cosine squared of an angle plus sine squared of an angle, that will always equal 1. So I get 1 over cosine squared of x, which is something I already wrote down. That's also equivalent to secant squared of x. So there are many ways to say this derivative. I've found at least 2 for you, but some of the other choices might be equivalent as well. Moving on to number 4. So which of the following is the derivative of this function? Now I have something a little different. Now I have a function which is defined as a function divided by another, so we're going to use the quotient rule here. So what is the derivative of 5x? That is 5 if I use the power rule. What's the derivative of x squared plus 4? The power rule tells us the derivative of x squared is 2x. And since 4 is a constant, its derivative is 0. So these are my derivatives. So then what is my derivative of f? So it's going to be the derivative of the function in the numerator, so that's 5, times the function in the denominator, left intact, so x squared plus 4, minus the function in the numerator, so 5x, times the derivative of the function in the denominator, so that's 2x, all over the denominator squared. So I did not capture the choices, but let's, in case of this, so this, we're done with the derivative. This is the derivative, but let's go ahead and simplify a little bit. Maybe we can give you a little more of a clue what your correct answer on the multiple choice portion is here. So if I expand all these brackets, I get 5x squared plus 20 minus 10x squared all over x squared plus 4 squared. So what do I get here? I'm going to get 20 minus 5x squared over x squared plus 4 squared. So hopefully that from there you can get to whichever the correct answer is of the choices. Moving on to our last question is okay. So this one's complicated because we're going to have to do the product rule embedded inside the quotient rule. So because of that, let's be careful with the way we set this up. So let's say that f of x is equal to g of x over h of x. So g of x is equal to e to the x times cosine of x. And h of x is equal to sine of x. There are other ways to set this up. I'm going to do the direct way, but for example, you could also think of cosine of x over sine of x as cotangent of x, or as 1 over tangent of x, and work with it that way. I'm going to choose to kind of go this the direct way. So if g of x is equal to e of x, e to the x times cosine of x, how do I find g prime? So g prime is going to involve the product rule just on its own. So how do I find the product rule? Or how do I do the product rule? This would be the derivative of the first function. So that first function is e to the x. What is the derivative of e to the x? That is e to the x times cosine of x plus the first function left intact, that's e to the x, times the derivative of cosine of x. What's the derivative of cosine of x? That is negative sine of x. Simplify this a little bit. So that comes to e to the x cosine of x minus e to the x sine of x. And then what is h prime of x? That'll be equal to cosine of x. So we've kind of handled all the pieces here. So now let's talk about what f prime of x is going to look like. First, let's fill in the template, then we'll fill in the details. How does the quotient rule work? This will be g prime of x times h of x minus g of x, h prime of x all over the square of h of x. Now we can fill in some of these details. What is g prime? That is the longest expression we have here. E to the x cosine times cosine of x minus e to the x sine of x times h of x, which is sine of x, minus g of x, which is e to the x cosine of x, times h prime, which is cosine of x, all over what? Cosine squared of x. So let's do a little bit of simplification here just to maybe help you get a sense of which of the correct multiple choices is yours. So let's expand all of our brackets first, see what we get. We're going to get e to the x sine of x cosine of x minus e to the x sine squared of x minus e to the x cosine squared of x all over cosine squared of x. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to get much of anything canceling. I don't have terms in common or anything. So I will circle both of these. I mean, these are both correct derivatives. Wasn't much available to us in the way of simplifying. Actually, there's one last thing I'll do here, just because I lied to you. There is something we have in common here. Everything in the numerator has this e to the x term. So if I factor that out, I get e to the x times this quantity, sine of x cosine of x minus sine squared of x minus cosine squared of x. And as I'm doing this, I'm realizing something else. Okay, so within this parentheses, I'm going to factor the negative sign. Actually, I just factored out everything. So I factor out a negative, and I get negative sine of x cosine of x plus sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x all over cosine squared of x. So what do we know about sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x? We saw that before. We know that comes out to be 1. So negative e to the x times negative sine x cosine x plus 1 all over cosine squared of x. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there, but hopefully you see your correct derivative among the choices now, but lots of ways to kind of go after this derivative. Many of you have asked me in the exit ticket, like how much simplifying do you want us to do? In general, it's going to be up to how much you want to do. Like, what do you feel comfortable with? How do you prefer it to look? Unless I ask you to simplify it in a certain way, you're usually not going to have to worry about it. It's going to be up to your personal preference.